Captain Mark Garrick trudged through the crumbling remains of the Concordia outpost, his boots echoing across the scorched metal floor. The air smelled like burnt circuitry, and every few steps, a flickering hollow sign warned of imminent collapse. He adjusted his rebreather mask, standard issue for Earth's colonial expeditions, and muttered, "If this place collapses on me, at least I'll die somewhere my ex-wife can't find me." A crackle of static caught his attention. He pivoted, plasma blaster at the ready, but instead of an enemy drone, he found a woman. She stood among the wreckage like a fragile monument, her long ears catching the dim blue light that filtered through the shattered ceiling. Her hair was tied back in a practical twist, but she still had the look of someone who belonged in a lab, not in a war zone. She stared at him, eyes steady but haunted. "My children are well behaved. I can be a good wife to you, human," she said. Her voice cracked, but her gaze didn't waver. Mark blinked. "Excuse me?" he said, lowering his weapon but keeping his guard up. The rebreather hissed with every breath, giving him a comically dramatic air. She took a step closer, holding the hand of a small boy with the same long ears and a solemn expression that could have been carved from starstone. Another child, a girl with bright eyes and a grin that threatened mischief, clutched at his leg like a barnacle. "I'm not here to beg," the woman continued. "I'm offering you everything I have left." Mark's mind whirred like a broken propulsion unit. "You're offering what exactly?" "Because last time someone offered me everything they had, it turned out to be a virus in a pretty box." She almost smiled. "Not a virus, not a trap. Just me. And them." She gestured at the children. "We need a protector. A home. My husband, he's gone." Her voice trembled, but she caught it quickly, her ears flicking as if to shoo away grief. Mark looked at the children. The boy's eyes were too serious for his age, and the girl's laughter had an edge of desperation. "Well," he muttered, "I've always had a soft spot for underdogs, and you lot look like the last underdogs in the galaxy." The woman exhaled. Relief? Hope? He couldn't be sure. "My name is Celia," she said. "Mark Garrick," he replied, extending his hand. She took it with a firm grip that surprised him. "Captain, actually," he added with a wry smile. "But let's keep that between us. Last time someone called me Captain, I ended up cleaning plasma burns off my jacket." Celia laughed, a sound that felt like a warm breeze on this cold, dead world. "Understood, Captain Mark." He looked around at the crumbling walls and flickering lights. "Well, Celia, let's get your kids somewhere safe before the roof falls in. Then you can tell me why you think I'm the right idiot to be your husband." As they walked, Celia told him about the outpost's hidden maintenance corridors, built by engineers who thought secret passages were fun. Mark, who'd never met an engineer who didn't think they were smarter than everyone else, rolled his eyes. "I swear," he said, "one of these days I'm going to write a book, The Idiot's Guide to Alien Labyrinths. It'll be a bestseller." Celia arched an eyebrow. "If you survive this, I'll buy the first copy." Mark chuckled. "Deal, but only if you write the foreword." And so they moved, the desperate widow and the reluctant captain, winding through the shadows of a dead outpost. Sparks danced on broken wires, and every step felt like a challenge. Yet amid the ruins of war and betrayal, humor sparked between them like a lifeline. A sign that even in the darkest corners of space, laughter still had a place. Mark led the way through the maintenance corridors, the sound of his boots muffled by the thick layer of dust coating the floor. He couldn't shake the feeling that the place had been abandoned in a hurry, like the crew had dropped their tools and run for the nearest escape pod. Sparks danced on half-broken conduits overhead, like fireflies that had traded nature for neon. Celia followed close behind, her long ears twitching every time a pipe groaned. The children clung to her, one on each side as if they'd grown roots in her shadow. Mark glanced back at them and smirked. "You sure these two are well behaved? They're staring at me like I'm the main course at dinner." Celia's lips curved in a dry smile. "They're curious. They've never seen a human who smells like old socks and engine oil before." Mark pretended to sniff his sleeve. "I'll have you know this is the latest in eau d'espace grunt cologne. Very exclusive." The girl giggled, a sound that echoed down the corridor and bounced off the metal walls. It was a small, bright thing in a place that had forgotten what laughter sounded like. They passed an old security station, the console cracked and dark. Mark's practiced eyes scanned the broken screens. "Place is dead as a black hole," he muttered. "Bet the only thing left here is trouble." Celia stepped forward, her fingers brushing the console's surface. Her touch left a faint, shimmering residue, like her skin had absorbed some alien alloy over the years. "My husband used to work here," she said softly. "He said this place was a marvel of human-alien cooperation, a bridge between species." She let out a sigh that felt older than the outpost itself. "And now look at it, a graveyard with better lighting." Mark studied her profile, the way her long ears drooped slightly when she spoke of her husband. He found himself wanting to say something comforting, but instead settled for, "Well, at least the lighting's not too bright. Makes my wrinkles less obvious." She turned to him, a surprised smile breaking through her grief. "Humans and their obsession with wrinkles," she teased. "My people don't get them. We get ear kinks." "Ear kinks?" he echoed, raising an eyebrow. "Sounds like a weird subgenre of galactic romance." Celia laughed, a genuine warm sound that made Mark's chest tighten unexpectedly. "Don't make me regret trusting you, Captain." They moved deeper into the corridors, the flickering lights casting shadows that danced like ghosts. Mark checked his handheld scanner. "There's a supply cache a few levels down. Might be some food and medkits left." Celia's children perked up at the mention of food. "Do they have, Chisby sticks?" the boy asked, his serious face breaking into a hopeful grin. "Chisby sticks?" Mark said, baffled. "Are those alien or something you got at a theme park?" Celia laughed again, a sound that seemed to lighten the air. "Alien snack. Crispy, a bit salty, tastes like happiness. Humans would probably hate them." "Hey," Mark said, mock offended. "I'll have you know I once survived 3 weeks on recycled protein paste and actually developed a taste for it. I'll eat anything." They paused at an intersection. A distant hum of malfunctioning servos vibrated through the walls. Mark peered around the corner, blaster drawn. "You might want to stay back," he whispered, though he couldn't help adding, "unless you want to see me heroically trip over a maintenance droid." Celia rolled her eyes but stayed close. "Captain Mark, if you trip over a droid, I promise to laugh. Quietly." They crept forward. Around the bend, a maintenance bot buzzed in the air, its mechanical limbs flailing like an angry octopus. Sparks shot from its core, illuminating the corridor with erratic flashes. "Stay here," Mark said. He lunged forward, wrestling with the bot as it shrieked in protest. Sparks flew and he yelped as one singed his sleeve. "Bad robot," he shouted, half serious, half joking. Celia clapped a hand over her mouth, trying not to laugh. Her children watched with wide eyes, the girl leaning forward eagerly. Finally, with a triumphant grunt, Mark yanked out the bot's power core. The bot whirred, sparked, and slumped like a deflated balloon. Mark stood, grinning like a kid who just won a prize at a fair. "Maintenance bots," he huffed, "almost as annoying as in-laws." Celia's laughter rang out, filling the corridor with life. Even the shadows seemed to shrink away, leaving only the promise of hope, and perhaps something more. Mark leaned against a dented bulkhead, catching his breath. His hair was damp with sweat, his fingers tingling from the static charge that had built up while wrestling the maintenance bot. Celia stood beside him, her long ears quivering as she brushed off debris from her worn tunic. Her children hovered nearby, their eyes darting between their mother and the sputtering wreck of the maintenance bot that Mark had just deactivated. "Well," Mark said, wiping his brow, "I think that's the worst of the outpost hospitality staff." Celia raised an eyebrow, her lips curling into a playful grin. "Do all human soldiers talk to robots like they're rebellious teenagers?" Mark chuckled. "Only the ones that try to kill me," he said, tapping his plasma blaster like a disobedient dog. "Now let's see what's behind door number 2. He pressed his palm to the security pad, hoping the system was as outdated as the rest of this place. The door gave a reluctant hiss, creaked open, and revealed a dimly lit chamber stacked with crates and broken machinery. Hollow signs flickered overhead, broadcasting safety protocols that hadn't been updated since Earth's last Olympics. Celia's children dashed inside, eager to explore. The girl, Mark had learned her name was Colleen, ran her fingers across a dusty console, leaving bright streaks in her wake. The boy, Aaron, eyed a half-disassembled drone with academic curiosity. Mark followed them, scanning the room. "Looks like a maintenance bay," he muttered. "Half the stuff in here's older than I am." Celia moved to a stack of crates labeled in a blend of human script and alien glyphs. She cracked one open and rummaged through its contents. "Hydration packs," she announced. "Expired, but they'll do in a pinch." Mark grinned. Expired's still better than protein paste. She handed him a pack and took one for herself. As they sipped the vaguely fruity liquid, Mark noticed the way her ears flicked when she was deep in thought. "So," he ventured, "you mentioned your husband was a scientist?" Celia sighed, her shoulders dropping as if the memory carried weight. "Yes, he was brilliant, always tinkering, always trying to fix things that weren't broken." She paused, then added with a faint smile, "Like this marriage of ours." Mark almost choked on his hydration pack. "Wow, tough crowd." She laughed, the sound bright and unexpected in the gloom. "He meant well," she continued. "He thought we could build bridges between our people. But in the end, he trusted the wrong allies." Mark felt a pang of sympathy. Yeah, humans are good at that, trusting the wrong people. He tossed the empty pack aside. "Look, I can't promise to be the galaxy's greatest diplomat, but I'm a decent shot with a blaster." She turned to him, her eyes serious but amused. "That's a start." A sudden whirring noise made them both tense. From a darkened corner, a small service drone powered up, its eyes glowing like embers in the gloom. Before Mark could react, Kayleen darted forward, a grin splitting her face. "Watch this!" she shouted. She jabbed a few buttons on a nearby console, and the drone let out a pitiful beep before deactivating with a mournful sigh. Mark gaped. "Remind me never to get on her bad side," he muttered. Celia beamed with pride. "Told you they were well behaved." Mark rolled his eyes. "You didn't mention they could out-hack a security drone." Colleen stuck her tongue out at him, and Aaron giggled. For a moment, the maintenance bay felt less like a tomb and more like a home, albeit a home with questionable wiring. Mark sighed and leaned against a crate. "All right, genius kids, let's see what other surprises this place has in store. Maybe there's a hot tub around here somewhere." Celia grinned. "If there is, it's probably rigged with an anti-human security system." "Great," Mark groaned. "Just what I need, an electrified bath." She laughed again, a sound that somehow made the gloom a little less heavy. And as they shared that brief moment of humor, Mark couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, this ragtag group was exactly what he needed to feel alive again. The air inside the maintenance bay carried a sharp tang of ozone and dust, like a stubborn memory that refused to fade. Mark scanned the cluttered space, eyes sharp for any sign of trouble, though he'd already learned that trouble in Concordia Outpost usually came in the form of malfunctioning bots, explosive coolant leaks, or, most recently, alien kids with hacking skills. Celia rummaged through a crate marked biohazard, muttering under her breath in a melodic language Mark didn't recognize. Her long ears twitched whenever she found something interesting, like the faint blue glow of a diagnostic tablet or the humming remains of a defunct med drone. Aaron and Kayleen hovered near an old reactor terminal, eyes wide with curiosity. Mark couldn't help but smile. He'd never seen kids so at home in the ruins of a collapsing space station. "Hey, junior engineers," he called. "No pushing random buttons, all right?" Last time someone pushed a random button, half the station tried to cook me for dinner. Aaron turned and gave him a solemn nod, as if Mark had just delivered the secrets of the universe. Kayleen, on the other hand, giggled and pressed her hands behind her back. Mark made a mental note to double-check the reactor's safety protocols later. Celia found what looked like a battered comm link and handed it to Mark. "Think you can get this working?" she asked, her eyes glinting with mischief. He took it, turning it over in his hands. "I'll try, but I'm better at breaking things than fixing them." "Is that a requirement for humans?" she teased. He smirked. "Absolutely. It's even on the recruitment poster." She laughed, and he found himself wishing he could bottle that sound. Something about it cut through the station's gloom. With careful hands, he opened the comlink casing, wires and circuits tangled like a nest of angry worms. He tried to keep his expression serious, though he knew he probably looked like a man wrestling a space squid. All right, let's see. Red wire to the blue one? Or maybe blue to red? Celia leaned over his shoulder, her breath warm on his neck. Are you sure you know what you're doing? Of course, he said with exaggerated confidence. I've got a 50% chance of success and a 100% chance of making it explode. She chuckled. Impressive odds. Mark grinned, flicked a switch, and the comm link whined to life, its screen flickering like an old neon sign. See? Easy. A voice crackled through the speaker. Maintenance logs. Corrupted. Reactor meltdown. Imminent. Mark's smile vanished. That's not a good sign. Celia's ears drooped. Meltdown? How imminent is imminent? Mark squinted at the screen. Depends. It could be 5 minutes or 5 days. Or it could be a glitchy voice recording from 50 years ago. He turned to the kids. Hey, mini geniuses, can one of you double-check this? Colleen bounced over and jabbed at the screen. She hummed in concentration. Looks like it's just a corrupted file, Captain. But the meltdown risk is real. Reactor's running too hot. Mark blew out a breath. All right, looks like we've got some maintenance work ahead. And by we, I mean me. Celia placed a hand on his arm. You won't be alone, Captain. I'm good with reactor cores, at least the ones that don't try to eat me. He couldn't help but laugh. That's oddly reassuring. As they made their way toward the reactor chamber, the corridor hummed with unstable energy, panels blinking with tired defiance. Mark stole a glance at Celia, her ears standing tall and defiant, her expression calm but determined. You know, he said, if we make it out of this alive, I'm buying everyone a round of Chisby sticks. Even you. Celia arched an eyebrow. Deal. But only if you try one too. Fine, he sighed. But I'm telling you now, if it tastes like happiness, I'm going to be very disappointed. Her laughter rang through the corridor, and for a moment, even the station's dying lights seemed a little brighter. The reactor chamber loomed ahead, a cavern of tangled pipes and flickering plasma conduits. A constant, unsettling hum vibrated through the air like the growl of some giant, restless beast. Mark felt sweat trickle down his neck, though he'd never admit it to Celia or her kids. All right, this is it, he said, adjusting his rebreather mask as he peered into the dim, flickering light. If this thing decides to blow, it's going to make my last birthday party look like a campfire sing-along. Celia arched one of her long ears, giving him a teasing smile. Human birthday parties are that dangerous? Mark gave her a sideways glance. You've clearly never met my Uncle Rizzo. Kayleen and Aaron giggled behind Celia, though even their laughter sounded tense. The little girl squeezed her brother's hand, and Mark's chest twinged with something he couldn't quite name. They reached the control panel, a battered relic covered in alien glyphs and human wiring that looked like it had been cobbled together by an over-enthusiastic maintenance droid. Celia crouched down, her fingers brushing the keys with a deftness that reminded Mark of a concert pianist. Her long ears quivered with every spark that leaped from the panel. I can stabilize the main core, she said, but I'll need your help with the coolant feed. It's, well, let's just say it's a little touchy. Mark winced. Touchy like a grumpy cat, or touchy like a thermonuclear device with a bad attitude? Celia's smile was both apologetic and amused. A bit of both. Mark sighed dramatically. Of course. Why can't we ever get an easy job? Like a hot tub installation. Because, she said with a grin, you'd probably flood the station and electrocute us all. True. He chuckled and glanced at the kids. All right, you two stay back. No hacking rogue maintenance bots while we're gone, okay? Colleen stuck her tongue out. No promises. Mark laughed and turned to Celia. All right, boss lady, let's do this. They moved to the coolant feed, a tangle of pipes that hissed and dripped like an angry serpent. Mark grabbed a spanner and peered into the mess. I swear this looks like the aftermath of a bar fight between an octopus and a salad spinner. Celia, working beside him, gave him a patient look. You humans have the strangest analogies. Hey, Mark said, wrestling with a corroded valve. It's how I cope with imminent doom. She laughed, quiet but genuine, and the sound made his chest tighten again. He tried not to think about how she'd looked at him back in the corridor, that spark in her eyes. A sudden hiss of steam made him jerk back. A section of piping bulged ominously, lights flaring red on the console. Celia's hands moved faster than Mark could follow, adjusting dials, pressing keys, her long ears angled with laser focus. "Mark, hold that valve steady," she called, her voice urgent but calm. "On it," he grunted, leaning his full weight into the spanner. Sparks shot from the pipe as it shuddered under pressure. Celia's fingers danced across the console, the screen flickering with alien script and human code. "Come on, you stubborn piece of junk," she muttered. "Hey," Mark quipped through gritted teeth. "No insulting the reactor." "It might have feelings." Celia let out a laugh that rang like a chime in the chaos. "Then it should consider therapy." Mark snorted, even as the pipe vibrated dangerously. "I'd pay to see that." A final whine from the reactor filled the room. The console flashed a steady green, and Celia exhaled. Stabilized, at least for now. Mark let the valve go and straightened, arms trembling. "See? I told you we'd survive. Maybe even make it to dinner." She turned to him, her face illuminated by the reactor's soft glow, and for a brief moment, the world around them seemed to hold its breath. "Thank you, Mark," she said softly. He forced a grin. "Hey, no problem. It's all in a day's work for the galaxy's worst handyman." She laughed, and the sound felt like home. Even in a dying station full of half-dead bots and leaky pipes, there was still room for laughter, and maybe, just maybe, a little bit of hope. Mark leaned against the railing on the observation deck, the starfield beyond the cracked window stretching into infinity. The Concordia outpost reactor hummed behind him, finally stable, at least for now. He let the tension drain from his shoulders, a tension that had been there for far too long. Celia stood beside him, her long ears catching the starlight, casting delicate shadows on her cheeks. Her children dozed nearby on an old maintenance blanket, exhaustion finally catching up with them after a day of high-stakes heroics and too many near misses. Mark smirked as he watched them, Colleen's head resting on Aaron's shoulder. "Well, look at that," he said, voice low. "You weren't lying. They're well-behaved after all, when they're asleep." Celia chuckled softly, her eyes warm. "I told you, Captain. My children are survivors, like their mother." He turned to her, studying the lines of worry that had softened now, the flicker of hope that had replaced the constant strain. She'd fought for them with a strength that had caught him off guard, and reminded him of what real courage looked like. "You know," he said, "when I met you, I thought I was just helping out a desperate widow, but it turns out you're more than that. You're a fighter, an engineer, a mother, and, no offense, a bit of a smartass." She laughed, a bright sound that made the station seem less like a tomb. "I'll take that as a compliment, Captain." He grinned. "You'd better." A soft beep sounded from the console behind them, a stable reactor reading. Celia walked over, checked the screen, and sighed with relief. "It's holding, at least for now." Mark shrugged. "Good enough for me. We've got a stable core, a working comm link, and enough rations to last until the next supply ship. Assuming there's a next supply ship." Celia's expression grew serious. "And what about you, Captain? What happens now?" He leaned against the console, arms crossed. Now I try to figure out how to be, well, not exactly a husband, but maybe a protector, a friend. I've spent most of my career bouncing from one assignment to the next, no strings, no commitments. But," he paused, his voice softer, "I think I'm ready for something different. Someone different." Celia's long ears dipped, a smile playing at her lips. "Different is good," she said. "Different is what saved us." Mark swallowed, a rare hint of vulnerability showing in his eyes. "So, what do you say, Celia? We get through this together, at least until your people come looking for you or we find a safer place." She stepped closer, her hand brushing his arm. "Captain Mark Garrick, if you can survive Chisby sticks and reactor meltdowns, I think you can handle a widow and her children." He laughed, shaking his head. "I make no promises about the Chisby sticks." Colleen stirred in her sleep, mumbling something about maintenance bots, and Mark felt an unexpected warmth in his chest. This wasn't the life he'd planned, scraping by in the outer colonies, dodging angry droids and half-broken reactors. But maybe, just maybe, it was the life he'd been meant to find. "All right then," he said, offering his hand. "Let's call it a partnership." Celia took his hand, her grip strong and sure. "A partnership," she agreed. The reactor hummed steadily, the stars beyond the window gleaming like silent witnesses to their pact. And as Mark looked out into the vast unknown, he realized that for the first time in years, he wasn't just surviving, he was living.